the next day after that C scan, we got a phone call from the doctor's office. They wanted me to go in. The doctor wanted me to go in for some blood tests, and this was in February. So this back problem had been going on for a couple of months, and so I went in for the blood test. I knew that something was strange about it just because not a lot was being said to me. And this blood test was not just a matter of saying, okay, we want to draw some blood, but it was more complicated than that. And then the following Friday afternoon, the doctor had set up another meeting with me to go over some things, a consultation, which I had never had before. And he's a good friend of mine. And I just thought, well, this is kind of strange. I kind of wondered if there was something serious going on, but he couldn't wait for that consultation appointment. Instead, he called me, and he even felt bad about calling me, but he just said, Mark, I don't want to have to wait. I don't want you to have to wait through the weekend. You just need to know that this is serious. You have a multiple myeloma. It's also known as bone marrow cancer, not bone cancer, and not melanoma, but multiple myeloma. And it is a blood.
So welcome to the Trailhead. The Trailhead is a place where we explore the deeper paths of Jesus-centered Christian spiritual growth and transformation. My name's Gene Maynard, and I'm going to be the host and the guide in this way. And my intent is to walk with you and invite you to come with me as we take steps towards a deeper, richer, life-altering connection with Christ. Today, I'm so happy to welcome back to the Trailhead my friend Mark Brewster. Mark has been a pastor for years in a church in northern Idaho called Orchards Community Church. He has experience being a pastor, but more than being a pastor, he's become a good friend of mine. I always have to work to edit out all the places where we are laughing and joking and laughing about ministry, but just enjoying having a relationship with each other. So I've managed to get all those out of this before I edit in Mark. And so, but it's just a way for me to tell you, I appreciate this man and who he is. I appreciate his heart. And he's a good guy. I don't know how else to say it. He's just a good person. And I'm so happy to know him, and I feel enriched by that. So Mark, thank you for joining us. And today, I want to talk about something that's pretty deep. It's very personal. It's about your journey through cancer, and you've written about this in a really good book. I've read it in the last few weeks called, I hope I get the title right. I have read it. It's called A Safe Place in the Storm. Did I get that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, okay. So A Safe Place in the Storm. And it's his own journey. It's his own telling us about his journey through cancer, but he places it in the middle of, the one of the great storm stories in scripture of Jesus with his disciples out in the Sea of Galilee in the middle of a storm that scares them to, just like out of several years of their life. And he, calms things and makes things safe for them again. And so, Mark, you've been a pastor and you've ministered to people with cancer, with heart disease, with losses of loved ones, and marriage breakups. You've been in the just on the firing lines, in the front lines of people going through all kinds of storms, and then you found yourself in a storm. So, tell us about when your journey with cancer began.
Well, it was actually well. First of all, Gene, I just want to say that the what you expressed about our friendship, that's mutual. and I really mean that. I've really enjoyed getting to know you, and I really appreciate you and who you are. And I too have read your book, Trekking, and found it to be so refreshing. So I want to make sure I say that.
Yeah, I appreciate
It's
that. Thank
mutual
you.
appreciation and respect and friendship there. But
Yeah.
as far as the whole cancer thing, it actually started that I know of. It was going on far before this, unknown to anybody. But it was in the Thanksgiving of 2015, where our whole family was here for Thanksgiving at our home, and we were doing a yard project. And in the process of that, I felt something in my back, and it didn't feel good. I thought, because I've had back problems most all of my life, I just thought, well, here we go again. But and I won't go into all the description of that, except for became very painful over the next 2 months, to the point that I was not able to lay down flat in my bed at night. I had to sleep propped up, and getting out of bed sometimes took 20-30 minutes. And
Mm.
it finally led to physical therapy that didn't work. And the physical therapist said, "Hey, you need to get a picture of this." And so I went in for a C scan. And then the next day after that C scan, we got a phone call from the doctor's office. They wanted me to go in. The doctor wanted me to go in for some blood tests, and this was in February. So this back problem had been going on for a couple of months, and so I went in for the blood test. I knew that something was strange about it, just because not a lot was being said to me. And this blood test was not just a matter of saying, "Okay, we want to draw some blood," but it was more complicated than that. And then the following Friday afternoon, the doctor had set up another meeting with me to go over some things, a consultation, which I had never had before. And he's a good friend of mine. And I just thought, well, this is kind of strange. I kind of wondered if there was something serious going on, but he couldn't wait for that consultation appointment. Instead, he called me, and he even felt bad about calling me, but he just said, "Mark, I, I don't want to have to wait. I don't want you to have to wait through the weekend. You just need to know that this is serious. You have a multiple myeloma. It's also known as bone marrow cancer, not bone cancer, and not melanoma, but multiple myeloma. And it is a blood cancer. It's kind of a relative of leukemia, and that's where it all began. And um, uh, it was well, I'll share probably more here in a
Did,
second.
yeah. Did you know anything about multiple myeloma?
Never even heard of it. Never even heard of it. I was still, in fact, the first few days I couldn't remember what it was called, and so I didn't know anything about it. So
Okay.
yeah,
So so it'd be interesting. I might ask you to maybe share a little bit, kind of third person wise, your wife's experience of those first few days. But I'm very curious about your just how you responded to that news over the first few days, the first few weeks. Eventually, treatments would begin, and you start adjusting, and routines get established or reestablished. But in those first few days, first few weeks, you're in response to reaction mode, right? And your body's responding, your mind's reacting, your
yeah.
imagination is kicked in. I mean, there's
Hmm.
all kinds of things that happen when you get news like this. So what was that like for you? You get the
Oh,
phone
it
call.
was, yeah, it was, it was absolutely, um, it was terrifying, quite honestly. I mean, it was like, first of all, I didn't know what this was. I mean, I just knew it was cancer. And of course, anytime you hear that C word, uh,
Yeah.
you know, you go all kinds of places in your mind. And so I think that just not knowing, you know, what this disease specifically was, not knowing how advanced it was within me at that point. And so I mean I remember that night I didn't, you know, I didn't sleep very well, obviously. And I do remember um, literally thinking through my funeral service. And
Mm.
that's, you know, that's where I went. And it wasn't, it wasn't devoid of the Lord in that, but it was
Hmm.
just kind of like, okay, Lord, I guess this is, you know, these are the days
Sure.
you've ordained for me. And I'm now going to be heading toward the path of the end of my earthly life. And it was confusion, it was fear, it was, um, I mean, the emotions went up and down and all over the place. And
Hmm.
and just trying to come to grips with the reality, and not even knowing what that reality was in, you know,
Hmm.
I mean, apart from knowing that I had cancer, that I had multiple myeloma.
Yeah. I think my observation has been as a pastor that we're around people with all kinds of traumatic things that happen to them. We don't quite have the in-depth knowledge as an actual doctor would, a medical doctor does, but we're around, we see outcomes, we see what happens. And I know for myself, when I hear certain things, I start to um, create outcomes. I start to imagine here's how things are going to go. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
Yes. Hmm.
We know
That's
just enough
exactly
to
right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. And it's really, you know, it's a real challenge when you have more ignorance about the situation than
oh,
what you know about the situation. Because again, you know that word. You know that word cancer. You know, I was
yeah,
learning new words, but I didn't know what they really meant. The multiple myeloma. Well, exactly what is this, um, and how serious is this? Although I think that most of the time, for at least when we hear about a cancer diagnosis, it we assume that we assume the worst. We don't assume the best. In as far as
yeah.
how life threatening this is.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's very, very typical response. The so I want to read. I want to so you've as we've been getting acquainted. I know you're very connected with your family. You have children, grandchildren. Your grandchildren 10 years ago. I don't know the age of your grandchildren, so maybe they were not all older. At that point in time, but with your wife and your children, at least what was that like? Your husband, your father, you've got cancer. I mean, what was it like for you thinking about your family? What and can you tell us anything about what it was like for your family as you kind of think back on those early days?
Well, in those early days, obviously, starting with my wife Jane, um, obviously we both. I mean, I knew that we were going to walk through this together, wherever it was going to lead,
Hmm.
and I knew that she was going to. Um, I knew that without her, I would not be able to handle this at all. Um, she knew that as well, and it's hard when you are the partner that is the caretaker, and so you're dealing with your own stuff, and yet this person is the one who is sick or whatever, and needs medical and care, but both of you need spiritual nourishment and emotional. I mean, it's a lot of suffering on her part as well as mine. So and God gave us the grace for this, where and I mentioned this in the book, where we just sat down. It was probably the following Monday, and we just had to decide, okay, how are we going to walk through this? What are some principles that we are going to establish in all of this, that and together we can walk through this? And I think that really helped us a lot by just
Can I can
establishing.
I can I ask you at what point? So, and kind of if you can kind of imagine a timeline, you get the news, doctor calls you on the phone, you go get through the weekend, you're gathering information, you're imagining your funeral, all of those things, and then you eventually get to a place where you and your wife say, okay, here's some things we can hang on to as we go through this. At about what point did you get to that conversation?
Well, again, and so much of this is God's grace, but we got to that point. So I got word Friday afternoon, and by Monday, that's when we took a drive, I believe, and started to just hash through some of this stuff. And I guess the one other thing, Gene, that we did is that every night when we would go to bed, we would each share, what is something I am feeling, what is something that I'm thinking, or no, what is something I am feeling, what is something I am thankful for. And there was one other, and I can't even remember what it was, but that was really
Mhm.
helpful, especially in the beginning days, because it was like, I'm feeling afraid, I'm feeling
Mhm.
confused, I'm feeling encouraged. I'm feel, whatever it was, and so we would continue to rehearse those things, and
Mhm.
so that was helpful. And we started that, I think, within that first week as well.
So
The,
one of the things I'm just picking up from you on is being able to have it. So I would suggest for anyone who's just taking this in, the importance of what you've just heard, the importance of not trying. I'm sorry, I'm starting to give a lesson now. I don't mean to do that, but
that's
I'm
all
just
right.
um, I'm struck by the importance of establishing a communication relationship with your spouse, your partner, your children, whoever those important people are in your life, so that when these moments come, it's a natural thing to say,
Yes,
"Oh, I'm feeling fearful," or "I'm feeling encouraged," or I'm overwhelmed," or whatever it happens to be.
right.
I think that's what I'm hearing you say.
Exactly, and to be able to be honest,
Yeah.
and you know, I don't have to pretend to be all full of faith here, because at times I wasn't. I don't have to be anybody but who I am, and recognizing that the Lord sees me right where I'm at, and I want my wife to see me that way, and I want to see her right where she's at because she's walking with me through this.
Boy, I don't want to get off in this part of the conversation right now, but you and I have to have this conversation because when people go through these moments, you always hear, and sometimes I've been on the receiving end of this when I'm going through a challenging moment for myself. And if I share that with the church or share that with some people, that are in my community, invariably someone will say something like, I thought you had more faith, Pastor, or
Yeah,
what, and
right.
you just,
Yeah.
I just want to slug them. It's just like it's so
Yeah.
stupid. It's so insensitive. All those kinds of things. So
Hmm.
we've got to keep it real here. We need to have that conversation. But I want to read a paragraph. So I'm just saying to anyone who's taking this in, I strongly urge you to check out on Amazon the book Mark wrote about his journey, with cancer and what it's done to him, what it's done for him, what he's experienced emotionally and spiritually, and how it's shaped who he is, and all of those kinds of things that he's going to share in a very personal kind of way. The book is called "Safe Place in the Storm."